I'm stoner, I'm stoner, I'm stoner. I'm stoner, I'm stoner, I'm stoner. What? I'm stoner, I'm stoner, I'm stoner.
Squad, welcome back to another episode of Fly High Productions with Mr. Follow Up. Squad, welcome back to another episode of Fly High Productions with Mr. Follow Up. Hey, so check this out. We back down in Memphis with it, and I ain't about to let them just watch this old Tyree Nichols incident up under the rug, right? But that ain't why I'm here. Just really here vibing tonight. Uh, no particular reason for this vibe, for this live. We just vibing. So pull up on me. Yeah, I got some interesting topics, questions, comments, concerns. Let's rap about it. But first I wanna touch on this like I say, the Tyree Nichols incident, right? And before we go any further, I'm let y'all hear from the mother of Tyree Nichols. It's on day one of the trial. Let's go.
I say about 8:30ish, 8:45, somewhere up in there. We got a knock at the door. My husband and I, we were getting ready to watch a basketball game. I was complaining about my stomach hurting earlier. So he decided to come in the room with me and watch the game. And we were just going to lay across the bed and watch the game. We got a knock at the door, bang, 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 Memphis police. My husband went to the door. I heard a gentleman say, does Tyree Nichols live here? My husband, he paused a second, and then I came to the door, and I said, yes, Tyree lives here. I'm his mother. What's going on? They proceeded to tell me the police officer that was at the door, it was actually two police officers at the door. One proceeded to tell me that Tyree was arrested. And I asked them why he was arrested. And they said for DUI. And DUI, that didn't sound right to me.
And tell the jury, why doesn't that make sense to you?
Because my son, he doesn't drink like that to have a DUI. We're not drinkers in our families. So Ty would barely drink a beer, or something. So it just didn't seem right to me. They proceeded to ask me, was he on drugs? Did he do any type of drugs? And I said, no, we don't do any type of drugs. Smoke a little marijuana. And I said, why? They said because he had all this wild strength and everything, and they had to end up pepper spraying him and tasing him. And that still didn't sound right to me. And I made a statement. Well, if all of that happened, then somebody must have put something in his drink or something if they were saying all of this stuff happened. So the officer told me that they're going to be taking my son to the hospital. I asked him where my son was, and the officer said he was nearby. And I said, nearby? And they said they were going to take him to the hospital because he had been tased and pepper sprayed. I said, well, okay, what hospital is he going to? I need to go. The officer told me that I could not go because Ty was arrested. He proceeded to get some more information from us and everything, and then they left.
After those officers left, what did you do next?
After the officers left, I started kind of pacing the floor a little bit. I got my phone and I started trying to call my son. He didn't answer. I told my husband, come on, let's go. Let's go find Ty. He took a little too long, and I had jumped in the truck, my SUV, and there was another police officer just sitting out there. So my husband came. We were gonna take the route that we thought, Ty would come home. And because they were saying that they were taking him to the hospital, we just kind of assumed that it would be St. Francis, because that's where normally they take, people. So as we got into our vehicle and we drove to Rains and Castlegate, we made a right on Rains. No, we made a right on Ross. I'm sorry. We made a right on Ross. We got down to Rains and Ross, and that's when we noticed Ty's car.
Now, that intersection at Ross and Rains where you see Ty's car, how far is that from your house, Ms. Wells?
Probably a half a mile.
When you saw Ty's car there, what did you do?
We immediately pulled over, and I got out the car and I started speaking to the officer that was there. The officer asked me again. It was a different officer. He asked me again, was my son on any type of drugs or anything, because he just had all this strength and all this Hulk Hogan strength and everything, and they had to do all these things to him in order for them to arrest him. And I kept trying to find out why they were arresting him in the first place.
And did that officer you were speaking with at Ross and Rains answer that question for you?
I don't recall. He just said my son was pulled over for DUI and he ran from the police. I think that's what he said. I can't remember if he said.
Did you come into contact with any other officers at that scene, or just one?
There was another officer there. They were gathering up the tape. He spoke to me, the officer did, and he handed me his card. After that, we left and went back to the house.
At that point, what is your plan? Are you waiting to hear more, or what were you doing during that time?
Well, when I got back home, I called my daughter, because I was actually on the phone with my daughter prior to the police coming to the door. And I called to let her know, Ty's been arrested. And she said, what? And after I explained to her what was told to me, we were both kind of baffled about it. And I said, well, there's nothing I can do tonight, I don't even know where he is. I'll just figure it out tomorrow, and I'll let you guys know what's going on.
What is the next thing you heard about or from Ty?
About 4 o'clock in the morning, I received a phone call from a doctor from St. Francis Hospital. The doctor asked me if I knew if my son was in the hospital. I said yes. I heard he got arrested and he was tased and pepper sprayed. The doctor said, no, ma'am, your son is sick. And I said, what do you mean he's sick?
Yeah, I checked through what the doctor said, other than some of the premise behind it, but she can't go into what his diagnostics are.
Your Honor, may we approach?
So yeah, I heard her describing how the police showed up at her door that night, and they was rather evasive with their answers, but they was trying to steer her with their questions. Uh, I'm gonna see if we can find that footage because I seen that footage there as well. That because I follow this maybe on day 2 when it first occurred, right? But like I said, there's footage out there that'll corroborate her testimony about the conversation that she had with the police, which I found it was rather strange to me too, and I don't even know Tyree, but the way they was trying to say that he was on drugs, and this right after I viewed the footage of them out there beating on my man, and I mean he didn't look to have too much. I mean he didn't seem to be overpowering them to me. He was rather submissive, if you ask me. What's the happened to our sound now, right?
Specifically what he said, did you become extremely concerned about Ty's condition?
Yes, very concerned.
And-
Until to the point where I called my cousin and I said, get over here right now. We need to get to the hospital and go see Ty.
And is that what you did?
Yes.
Who went to the hospital with you at that time?
My cousin Tony, she came over to meet us, and my husband and I
What hospital was Ty at?
at St. Francis Hospital.
And tell the jury what happened when you walked into St. Francis.
As we were walking into St. Francis, there was another officer walking in. We were kind of going in the same direction, so I asked, you're working late tonight, huh? He said, yes. He said, I'm here to sit with a prisoner. And I said, well, is the prisoner's name Tyree Nichols? And he said, yes. And I said, well, that's my son. He said, oh, okay, well, follow me. So we all proceeded to walk to Ty's room.
Ms. Wells, I know this is going to be difficult, but I want you to explain for the jury when you went in Ty's room, what you saw, what Tyree looked like, what you saw, what you felt, what happened in that moment.
When I walked into the room and I saw my son, I immediately went over to him and I fell out on him because my son was beaten to a pulp. His head was the size of a watermelon. His nose was broken. His neck was split open from the swelling. He was bruised from head to toe. It was like they beat the shit out of him. That's what they did. They beat the shit out of my son and left him for dead. That's what they did.
And Ms. Wells, were there other officers in that hospital room when you walked in?
The doctor was there. There were some other officers in there. Once I saw my son and I basically passed out on him, basically. I just laid on him and just started crying. And I just burst out and said, what the fuck is going on here? This does not look like no pepper spray and no tasing. And
this game, you're not ready for.
a police officer took my husband and I out the room. My cousin stayed there and took us into another room. I want to say it was a sergeant or captain, I can't remember. We spoke briefly. And then next thing you know, all of Shelby County police and everybody was out the room. They said TBI had taken over the case. And all the police officers that were there were gone. And so it was just the TBI, the nurses, the doctor, and my husband and my cousin. We were in the room with my son.
When you saw your son, was he ever responsive to you that night?
No. Tyree was not responsive. He was on a breathing machine, and the machine was keeping him alive.
And did you know from the minute you walked in that room that night that your son was gone?
Yes. You couldn't. There's no way my son would have survived from that. He was already deceased, basically. I say they must keep him on those breathing machines for 72 hours. But my son was deceased.
Ms. Wells, several days after that, did you get a call like that from the hospital on January 10th informing you of your son's passing?
Yes, I got a call a little after 2 by the same doctor, Charles. I want to say Charles. I can't remember. I meant to look. I can't remember. He said, Mrs. Wells. I said, yes. He said, this is Dr. from St. Francis Hospital. I said, yes. He said, I just called to tell you that I pronounced your son deceased at 1:41 p.m. And I just lost it. I dropped the phone and I lost it. 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 Because the first thing I had to do is try to figure out how I'm going to tell his siblings that their little brother is deceased. That was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do as a mother, is to explain to them. I called my daughter. When I explained it to her, I heard her falling down the stairs. She cracked her nose. And the fact that I'm from California, all my kids still live in California. So it was very difficult to not be there to tell them. I called my middle son, my oldest son, Michael. I told him, I don't even think he even heard me. And the reason why I say that is because a couple days later, he called. He said, Mom, what's going on with my little brother? Why haven't you called and told me anything? I said, Mike, Ty is gone. And he just lost it. He was like, what do you mean he's gone? I said, I told you Ty didn't make it. And he lost it. And then I had to call my other kids. My middle son, I had to call him. And then my god kids, and everybody just started. Everybody knew at that time. Yes, that was the most hardest thing that I ever had to do as a mother, as a parent, to tell the siblings that your baby brother is deceased, and really for no reason at all.
Ms. Wells, at the time that Ty passed, how old was he?
Ty was 29. He was a 29-year-old young man still trying to find his way in life. You know, he hadn't found his way yet. He was getting there. He loved to skateboard.
Ms. Wells, I'm gonna pass you a picture.
This is
And can you tell the jury what you see in that photograph?
my happy Tyree.
And is that what Tyree looked like that day he left your house on the afternoon of January 7th, 2023?
Yes. He didn't have on his suit, but yes.
Your Honor, I would ask this be marked as Exhibit 2.
All right, we will just go ahead and first enter the stipulation on the record for Exhibit 1, and then we will show the picture of Tyree Nichols as Exhibit 2.
Your Honor, permission to publish.
This one.
And Ms. Wells, looking up at the TV screen here in the courtroom, is that the photograph of Tyree?
Yes.
Is that what he looked like that afternoon when he left your home?
Yes. Yes, that's what he looked like.
And Ms. Wells, after this occurred, you had been told, you mentioned that the officers said that night that Tyree was nearby.
Yes, nearby.
Did you later find out that the events in this case happened at Castlegate and Bear Creek?
It was later on. Actually, my son, they were looking at different videos and things of that nature, and they realized that this had happened in a neighborhood. And as they started putting two and two together, they realized that it happened in the first cul-de-sac of our subdivision.
And tell the jury, if you can, about how far from your front door to where this happened, that cul-de-sac where Castlegate and Bear Creek is, how far away is that?
About 80 to 100 feet.
Ms. Wells, I'm going to pass you another photograph. Ms. Wells, do you recognize what's in that photograph?
Yeah, I recognize
And can you tell the jury what you see there?
my son beaten to a pulp
And where was that picture taken?
at St. Francis Hospital. My husband actually took this picture.
And is that what he looked like when you first saw him?
Yes. As we were walking in, and I saw him, and as I was walking over towards him, my husband took this picture.
Your Honor, I ask this be marked as Exhibit 3.
Any objection? We'll show the photo of Mr. Nichols in the hospital as Exhibit 3.
Your Honor, permission to publish. Ms. Wells, looking at the TV in the courtroom, is that the photograph you just looked at?
Yes.
And is that what your son looked like when you first saw him that night?
Yes.
Or the early morning hours of
Early
January
morning.
8th?
Yes.
At some point after Ty passed, did you all have a memorial service for him?
Yes, we did.
And when and where was that, Ms. Wells?
It was approximately, I can't remember the day.
That's okay.
I'm drawing a blank on the funeral home, and I'm drawing a blank right now.
That's okay. Did you have a service here in Memphis?
I did. Ty actually had 2 services.
And if one was here in Memphis, where was the other?
Both of them were in Memphis.
Okay.
Yes.
Just one moment, please.
Yes, sir.
Why don't we pass the witness?
All right, Mr. Perry?
No cross-exam, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Mr. Leffler.
Thank you, Your Honor. As well as, my name is Steve Leffler. I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to refer to your son as Mr. Nichols.
Thank
I think he
you.
deserves that respect.
Thank you.
And so if I use Mr. Nichols, I'm talking about your son. Not only are you the mother of Mr. Nichols, you're also the administrator of his estate, is that correct?
Yes.
And as the administrator,
Your Honor, may we approach?
Now, what I want to do before we go any further, I want to see if I can find that footage of the night the police showed up at Tyree Nichols' home. Now, the testimony from the mother may not be strong enough, you know, to say that these boys are guilty, right? But damn, we had the footage. We clearly viewed the footage of these officers. And I still don't think all the officers that was out there that night came to trial. I think they should have been part of the trial as well. A couple of more of them should have even gotten charges. Let's see what I'm looking for. Okay. The night the police showed up at Tyree Nichols' home. Let's see if they ain't took it down yet. They still got the video footage of these boys up here, and a couple of people ain't seen it yet. So let's take a look at the footage at least, so we'll know why everybody appalled at the verdict, the not guilty verdict. Them other 3 police officers, like they all should have went down. Every last one of them. I ain't see the white guy come in there. He was out there too. He should have been charged with something. He should have been charged with not stopping them, whatever it's called. I don't know the terminology, but I do know it was wrong for him not to intervene. As a police officer, that's it. That was his duty to protect, right? All right, the following content may contain graphic or violent imagery. Viewer discretion is advised. I understand and wish to proceed.
Hi, Mike, Rebecca. Yeah, we have been watching Memphis, all of our teams across the country, as protests have broken out now that this video is out.
What are we doing here? Come on now.
there publicly. Memphis, thankfully, and across the U.S., things have been staying calm and peaceful. We do want to warn you, the video you're about to see is horrifying and a failure by officers on many levels. Police are asking people to stay calm and protest peacefully. Released in 4 parts online Friday night, the police footage shows Tyre Nichols pulled over for a traffic stop. Things quickly escalate. Nichols is tased and he runs away. When they catch him, they pepper spray and beat him. You can hear as he cries out for his mother.
Got all of this emotion and aggression ramped up. Now he's gotten away from us. The overreaction occurred at that second location.
Nichols died 3 days later in the hospital. The video has sparked outrage in Memphis, where authorities have called in resources.
We welcome peaceful protests. We will make space for peaceful protests, but at the same time, we want to protect our city.
There are protests across the country, like in Boston and New York.
My message to New Yorkers is to respect the wishes of Mr. Nichols' mother. If you need to express your anger and outrage, do so peacefully.
In D.C., all sworn personnel have been activated.
We understand the outrage people have currently and how hurt and painful this is, but we're going to continue to say violence is unacceptable.
Never see her.
All 5 officers face the same charges, including second-degree murder. Tonight, Mike, Rebecca, they are all out on bond, and from the White House and the VP's office.
Direct the narrative and give you an opinion.
I'll swear affirm that the testimony you give today will be the truth, the truth, so help you God. I do. That's easy.
Dr. Ross, will you state and spell your first and last name for the jury, please?
Marco, M-A-R-C-O, Ross, R-O-S-S,
Dr. Ross, where are you employed?
at the West Tennessee Regional Forensic Center
How long have you been there?
since March of 2007,
What is your current title or position?
Chief Medical Examiner and Forensic Pathologist.
How long have you held that position?
I've been the Chief Medical Examiner for approximately 3 years now, as Forensic Pathologist since I started there.
What are your duties as the chief medical examiner?
To oversee the operations of the West Tennessee Regional Forensic Center and to direct the activities of staff pathologists.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about your educational background before becoming the chief medical examiner?
I received my medical degree from Tulane University in 1985. I then completed a residency in general surgery at the University of South Carolina in 91, and then served as a surgeon in the U.S. Navy from 91 to 95. Following that, I completed a residency in anatomic and clinical pathology at the University of Vermont in 1999, and a forensic pathology fellowship at the University of North Carolina in 2000. Following that, I served as a medical examiner in Phoenix, Arizona for 2.5 years, then Spokane, Washington for 4.5 years before coming to Memphis.
And as part of your duties, are you a member of any professional societies, or do you have any certifications or licenses along with your position?
I'm currently licensed to practice medicine in the state of Tennessee, and I am board certified in anatomic and clinical pathology, as well as forensic pathology, and hold memberships in the National Association of Medical Examiners and the American Academy of Forensic Sciences.
Dr. Ross, can you tell the jury a little bit, as a medical examiner, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? What are your actual job duties?
We are responsible for evaluating those deaths that occur either due to unnatural means or are sudden and unexpected deaths or deaths that occur without the attendance of a physician.
Do you perform autopsies?
Yes.
And tell the jury a little bit about how you go about doing that.
When we perform an autopsy, that is an examination of the body, both the outer surfaces and internal structures of the body. We start by examining the outer surfaces and removing clothing, looking at skin surfaces, looking for evidence of disease and injury. Then we proceed with an internal examination, which means making incisions in the chest, abdomen, and head in order to examine the internal structures, organs, and tissues of the body, also looking for evidence of disease and injury.
Dr. Ross, in your career as a forensic pathologist, approximately how many autopsies would you say you have performed?
I'm on the order of about 5,000 autopsies at this point in my career.
And in the course of your duties as a medical examiner, have you had occasion to testify in court?
Yes, I am.
Have you testified here in these state courts?
Yes, I am.
Have you testified in this court in particular?
Yes, I am.
Have you testified also in federal courts?
Yes, I am.
Your Honor, at this time I would tender Dr. Ross as an expert in forensic pathology.
Any objection? No objection. No objections, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Judge. Can you tell the jury, you just described what an autopsy is and what you do. When you go about performing an autopsy, do you have occasion sometimes to review additional records? Maybe if the patient transferred to you from a hospital, on occasion would you look at hospital records?
Yes.
Would you look at ambulance run reports if that was available?
Yes.
And does that information come to your office, or is that something you have to request additionally?
We usually have to request it on occasion if it comes by other means, but usually we actually request it from those sources.
And you described to the jury generally what an autopsy is. When you do that autopsy, do you, when you make your findings, do you also prepare sometimes diagrams that go along with that report?
Yes, part of the autopsy includes making notations, usually on diagrams, at the time of autopsy. And those will often get incorporated, at least into the case file, not into the report itself.
Do you take photographs during the autopsy as well?
Yes, we do.
Those photographs often document injuries or the findings that you make.
Correct.
In each autopsy you perform, is that autopsy given a unique identifying number?
Yes, it is.
And in the case today, we're interested in autopsy 2300-0074. Are you familiar with that autopsy?
Yes, I am.
And who was the patient in that autopsy you performed?
Tyree Nichols.
And in this particular case, did you prepare that full report we've just been discussing?
Yes.
Do you recall, as we just mentioned in the case of Tyree Nichols, did you have occasion to review additional hospital records?
Yes, it is.
I want to pass you a document. And Dr. Ross, if you'll pull it, read that and tell me if you recognize what that is.
These are copies of our report of investigation, the autopsy report, the neuropathology consultation report, the toxicology reports, associated diagrams, as well as an evidence release report and a copy of the death certificate.
Does that appear to be a full copy of the autopsy report for Tyree Nichols?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I would ask that this be marked as the next number exhibit.
Objection.
Ross, did you bring your own copy of that report with you for today?
Yes, I did.
When was this autopsy performed?
It was performed on January 11, 2023.
And who performed this autopsy?
Myself and Dr. Laura Badwell, who was a fellow in training at the time.
I'm going to pass you a photograph. Dr. Ross, do you recognize this photograph?
Yes, I do.
What is pictured there?
It's a photograph of the face of the deceased Tyre Nichols taken at the time of autopsy.
Does it also have that specific autopsy number that you mentioned earlier?
Yes, it does.
And does every photograph that's taken during the autopsy have that identifying number in it?
Yes, it does.
Your Honor, I've asked this to be marked as the next.
Any objections? No objection. We'll show the photo of Mr. Nichols' face autopsy as exhibit 1.
Your Honor, permission to publish? And looking at the screen, Dr. Ross, is that Tyre Nichols as you encountered him on January 11th during the autopsy?
Yes, it is.
Dr. Ross, you mentioned when you go about to perform an autopsy, you first start with an external examination and then do the internal examination. So I want to start today with the external examination. First, and I believe there may be some diagrams in the autopsy that could be helpful in explaining this, but did you do the external examination of Mr. Nichols?
Yes.
And tell the jury a little bit about how you go about that.
We just look over the surfaces of the body. We evaluate for any irregularities or abnormalities on the skin surfaces, make notations of things such as size, color, and distribution of any of the abnormal areas.
Did you find such abnormal areas in this particular case?
Yes, we did.
And did you document those?
Yes, we did.
And did you diagram them?
Yes.
Photograph?
Yes.
I want to draw your attention to one of those diagrams within the autopsy. I believe there are several diagrams, but the one in particular that's labeled first, let's start with external evidence of injury.
Yes.
And Your Honor, this is part of the autopsy that's been admitted. I'm asked permission to publish that diagram so the jury can follow along. And if I could also pass Dr. Ross a laser pointer in case it may be useful.
It sure works. Wasn't working yesterday.
Dr. Ross, we may need to test the test. I think we have to point it at the screen to see if it's working. Dr. Ross, if I may have it back, you can maybe. Thank you. The large circle, but not a red dot. Well, Dr. Ross, you may have to do it without a laser pointer. if you will, Dr. Ross, if you would step down, and I have a copy of that here, sort of discuss with the jury, and I apologize, the types of injuries we see here, and they can also see on the diagram behind me.
What we documented on this diagram are the locations of abrasions, otherwise, or scrape marks on the body. And those are labeled with the letter A. And then we also noted the locations of contusions, also known as bruises, labeled with the letter C for contusion. So on this diagram, we can see several letters A and C referring to abrasions and contusions. There are abrasions on the right side of the face, on the top of the left and right shoulder, over the central chest region. There are also abrasions on the knees and on the fingers of the left hand, and there are, right hand, and then they're also on the elbows. And then there are areas of bruising on the right upper arm, the right forearm, the right hip and abdomen region, and also on the left lower leg and on the left side of the neck.
And those injuries you just discussed, would these be more what we may refer to as superficial injuries? As you mentioned, bruising, but then the abrasions are just sort of scraping type injuries?
This is what we see on the surface of the skin, and some of it remains a little bit more superficial and limited to the skin. Some of it is continuous with deeper injuries of the body.
And is that something that you can then learn more about as you do your internal examination?
Correct.
If you'll resume your seat on the witness stand, I'm going to pass you, Dr. Ross, some photographs of those injuries you just discussed. Your Honor, if I may pass all of these and then we'll admit it collectively, if it may just be easier. Dr. Ross, the first photograph, can you tell me what
The man had
you see there?
injuries from his head to his toe.
This is a photograph of the right side of the face, showing an area of scrape mark and a little bit of bruising on the right temple region of the face.
Thank you. Can you describe the next photograph?
The next one is a photograph showing the lips been lifted up so that we can see that there is a broken tooth. The right medial or middle incisor has been broken. The next photograph shows an abrasion on the left elbow. The next photograph shows abrasions on the right knee. The next photograph also shows abrasions to the right knee, just a little bit more, not as close up as the previous photograph. The next photograph shows an abrasion on the left knee. And the next photograph shows abrasions on the some of the knuckles of the right hand. And the next photograph shows abrasions on the top of the right shoulder. And the next photograph shows an abrasion on the left shoulder.
And the photographs that you just looked at, are those photographs consistent with the injuries you just discussed in the diagram?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, I would ask that these photographs be marked as the next collective exhibit.
No, all we asked is to give them a nine, that I think it's nine sequential numbers.
the way that you read it, just for the sake of the record, and 1 through 9, I don't mind it being as a cumulative exhibit, but it should be, there's not consideration.
Well, if there is going to be a cumulative exhibit, there's not going to be a sub number for each of these. It will just be one part of the exhibit. So it's almost going to reference it. You'll just need to reference exactly what the picture is. So people 9 photos will show this as a collective exhibit. Exhibit 25 will be autopsy.
Thank you, Judge. Your Honor, if I may publish to the jury, and again, if I could just have Dr. Ross step down and with each photograph, show the jury what he's describing. Thank you, Judge.
This is a photograph of the right side of the face. You can see the eye is over here, and the ear is back here, right over here. And then right here next to the right eye on the right temple, there's the sort of darker area here, and then you see kind of a reddish, pinkish area down there. That represents an abrasion or a scrape mark on the right temple region. Some of it is just darker because it's healing or beginning to heal and scab over in some areas. There may be some associated bleeding underneath those tissues as well. This is a photograph where we have lifted up the upper lip to show that the tooth on the right side, the incisor tooth, has been broken. You can see that the one on the left side is intact, the one on the right side is a broken tooth. It's a photograph showing the left elbow, right, and there is an abrasion or a scrape mark on the left elbow. That reddish pinkish lesion is a scrape mark. It's a photograph of the right knee. Several of those pinkish reddish scrape marks around the right knee. Another photograph of the same injury, just taken further back, so you can see it relative.
Family saying they're gonna do time anyway.
Of the leg above
Just hold on for justice.
And on this one, you can see another abrasion, that pinkish area on the left knee. And these are some scrape marks on the back or knuckle area of the right hand. This is a photograph of the top of the right shoulder, showing those kind of reddish brownish areas are additional abrasions, scrape marks on the top of the right shoulder. And this is on top of the left shoulder, showing another area of abrasion, that reddish brown area.
We'll wish they would let us see the photographs.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. I'm going to draw your attention to another diagram in your autopsy report labeled injuries at the top. If I could pass you, I know you have your report as well, copy. As opposed to the one that we just discussed, does this one have more detail about injuries?
Yes, the previous diagram simply showed the locations of the injuries. In this diagram, we are including a description of the injuries, primarily that of size and coloration of the injury.
Could we use your house to trial our 24-hour bathroom upgrade system? We're looking for homeowners within valid...
And is that what the notations, on several of these notations, there's numbers out to the side? Can you tell the jury what that?
Yes, those numbers refer to the dimensions or size of that injury in inches.
I want to ask you about one thing in the autopsy report. It says that it says that Mr. Nichols was 73 inches tall and weighs 209 pounds.
Correct.
If the information was that Mr. Nichols weighed much less prior to this incident, is there any explanation upon your contact with Mr. Nichols why he would weigh that amount?
Because of the amount of fluids administered to him medically during his hospitalization. The hospitalization records in most hospitalized cases, they keep a fairly accurate recording of the amount of fluids given to the body, primarily as either fluids ingested, dietary fluids, but also includes intravenous fluids, IV fluids, blood products. And in this case with Mr. Nichols, basically all primarily intravascular fluids. I believe some blood products were also administered, but primarily intravenous fluids of some variety. And then they also measure output. And in this case, it's primarily urine, the amount of urine that occurred. And during his stay in the hospital, as I recall, the records showed that he had received approximately 25.5 liters of fluid, but had only put out about 4 liters of fluid. So he's got an excess of 20.5 liters of fluid in his body. So that's how much more fluid is retained by his body that was not excreted by the body. And that amount comes out to about 5.7 gallons, if I remember right. And in terms of weight, that amount of, if that is 5.7 gallons of water, is about 40 pounds. So it can explain why he has so much additional weight, because of all the fluid that he was administered but retained. And the reason he retained all that fluid is because he had a very low urine output during his hospitalization.
Thank you for that explanation. We discussed some of his external injuries. Dr. Ross, I want to move now to the internal examination. I want to focus primarily on what your findings were regarding the examination of the head and neck area.
Yes. What the internal examination of the head and neck showed was that there were some injuries of the what we call subscapular and subgaleal tissues. These refer to, on the scalp of the head, you have areas primarily just kind of underneath the skin. Those are the subscapular tissues. And then there's this layer of kind of more fibrous tissue that covers the skull, sort of between the skull and the skin. That's called the galea. And there was blood both underneath that galea layer as well as in the subscapular tissues, and we noted that in the left back of the head, the left occipital region, the left frontal or the left front part of the head, and also in the very extensive area of hemorrhage on the scalp tissues on the right side of the head. In addition to that, there was a muscle on each side of the head called the temporal muscle, and there was a hemorrhage within that muscle on the right side of the head. We then proceeded with an internal examination of the head, and looking at the brain, saw that there were areas of some contusion or bruising on the brain surfaces towards the front, sort of the left side, what we call the left temporal cortex, and then when we did examinations by making sections in the brain, we could see that there were injuries and hemorrhages inside the brain tissue, the most significant of which was a large area of tearing of the brain tissue on the left side of the brain that extended from near the surface of the brain on the outer left side and towards the front, and extending into the deeper structures of the brain on the left side, and a lot of hemorrhage associated with this actual tearing of the tissue. We also noted a smaller area of tearing on the right outer part of the brain as well, also with hemorrhage in that lesion. Then, as part of the examination of this, we also microscopically looked at the brain tissue and could see that in addition to these areas of hemorrhage that were occurring relating to the contusions or bruising on the surface of the brain, as well as the tearing of tissues on the more internal parts of the brain, we could see what is known as axonal injury. The axons are parts of the brain cells. The brain cells themselves or nerve cells are composed of a body of the cell, the main part of the cell being located in the brain, but then there are axons, which are these long processes that extend from the main part of the cell of a nerve and connect with other cells, other nerves, and down even into the spinal cord. So these axons are important for sending information from the main body of a nerve cell so that I can send an electrical signal or impulse to other nerve cells in other parts of the body. When there are injuries to those cells, you can disrupt those axons, and there are special stains we can use to look at those axons, and that is called axonal injury. And he had evidence of axonal injury in multiple areas of his brain. And based upon the distribution of those axonal injuries, we can determine if it's primarily because of traumatic destruction of those axons, or sometimes those axons can be disrupted by a lack of blood flow to those areas, and that's called more of a vascular type of axonal injury, or it has a vascular pattern. Because of the lack of blood flow, you can also get some injury to the axons, but that has a different pattern. And then sometimes you just can't tell, and it's what's called an indeterminate. There were some areas of indeterminate pattern, but there were multiple areas of clear traumatic pattern of axonal injury, indicating that these axons had been disrupted because of the shear effect of traumatic forces being applied to the brain.
You talked about axonal injuries. When you discussed the hemorrhaging, but also the tears within the brain, I think in your report it's referred to as torsional injury.
It's a type of torsional injury. It's evidence of a torsional injury, which would mean to indicate that the brain itself is not entirely fixed within the head. It can shift because the brain is surrounded by a layer of fluid called cerebrospinal fluid, which allows the ability of the brain to shift around a little bit independently of your movement of the skull. But if your skull or head is forced to move in a manner very rapidly, the brain may have difficulty sort of catching up with that. And when it does, you get different forces that twist on that brain, and that actually tears on the brain tissue, and that's what's called torsional injury.
In your experience, Dr. Ross, when have you most commonly seen these types of torsional injuries where you have the twisting and the tearing of the brain within the skull?
Most commonly, in my experience, I've usually seen those kinds of injuries, like in car accidents, for example, or people falling off of a height of some sort.
Can you explain to the jury why that would happen in a car accident?
Again, it's the power of the forces that's involved with the impact on the head, and a lot would have to do with the positioning of the head and where the motor vehicle might impact and how strained an individual is, and whether or not the head itself may impact or not with other parts of the vehicle or independently because of the forces of a motor vehicle.
After you completed the initial autopsy portion, and I mean the actual examination of the external and internal organs of Mr. Nichols as you described, was there some additional work that had to be done to make these determinations of the brain injuries?
Well, I mean, when we looked at the brain ourselves, we did also consult with a neuropathologist, Dr. Walker, in New York, and she looked over our case as well, looked at all of the photographs that we took of the case, as well as we sent her all of the microscopic slides that we had performed on this case. We sent to her for her interpretation.
Did you also, after completing the autopsy and conferring with the neuropathologist, did you view the video, any video in this case?
Yes.
And was that what we refer to as a skycop video or pole cam video?
Yes, I believe so.
Your Honor, if I may show that video to Dr. Ross now. Dr. Ross, it takes a minute for the camera to get there, but.
They can't consider this as resistance. They couldn't possibly consider this as resistance. Oh man, they jumped on him. They got his hands behind his back. Come on man, steady punching him. In his head. Looked like about 3 or 4 of them to the head. Ordeal should have been over with. It didn't take all this. start running till he got pepper spray. The way he kicking now, you know, they. Another kick for what? Another kick for what?
Stopping it at 2036, 29.
And they
Dr. Ross,
considered
is
it.
that
They
video
said this-
part of what you reviewed?
They said they was not
during the autopsy
guilty.
in this case?
Yes.
What you see on that video, is that consistent with the injuries you found when you did the autopsy?
Yes, it is.
I want to talk a little bit and starting with the external injuries we discussed. You've explained to the jury, we've seen some photographs. What you see on that video, tell the jury what you saw on that video that's consistent with those injuries.
Primarily, all of the in blows that he received or from the other individuals. He received blows to the back and to the arms that would account for some of the bruising, as well as the areas of hemorrhaging that we saw deep in the muscular tissue during the autopsy. And then the impacts to the head and both some kicking and fist punching of the head that caused direct impacting to the brain, which would lead to bruising of the brain surfaces, as well as some of those blows did result in sort of these twisting maneuvers of the head that would have resulted in the torsional injuries that we saw within the brain.
Meet the new standard in sleep. This is Pod 4 Ultra. It's not a bed, it's a...
Explain for the jury a little bit. We see that video, and I don't know in your review if you stopped there, or did you watch the entire video, or more than we just saw?
I think I watched the point up to where emergency medical services arrived on the scene.
And if the video shows Mr. Nichols, well, let me start with this, Dr. Ross. What is the sort of chain of events, so to speak? You talked about these brain injuries as well as the injuries on his body from this trauma. What starts to happen physiologically within Mr. Nichols' body after he sustains these blows?
Due to the injuries to the brain that were sustained, the brain itself responds by beginning to swell. Swelling is a normal tissue response to injury. An example, you bump yourself and you get a bruise really hard, and that area of skin and tissue around it can swell some. Well, the brain itself swells. The problem with the brain swelling is that it's swelling inside the skull, which itself cannot expand. So when the brain tissue swells inside the skull, there's increased blood pressure, increased pressure in the tissues of the brain. And what happens because of that increased tissue pressure inside the brain, it can affect the blood flow in the brain. And it can actually, that pressure itself can sort of squeeze down on some of the blood vessels. And so you actually get a loss of blood supply to certain areas of the brain. And the areas of the brain that can be affected by this include areas of the brain that can affect and control heart rate and breathing. And so head injuries such as this with the swelling can lead to a cardiopulmonary arrest, which is what occurred in Mr. Nichols' case. He was transported to the hospital, and with resuscitation measures, They were able to resuscitate him to the point where his heart activity returned, but there was persistent brain injury. He remained comatose during that, even after resuscitation. There was some activity that
So basically, in other words, he was unalive before he even left the scene. He was DOA. But they was found not guilty on 21 counts.
made them concerned that he might be having a little bit of seizure activity. They used some seizure medications, but subsequently, over the next few days, he progressed to the point where they determined that he no longer had any brain activity and was pronounced brain dead.
Typically, as part of an autopsy, is toxicology a part of that?
Yes.
And in this case, are there toxicology reports for Mr. Nichols?
Yes, there are.
Are there more than one?
Yes, there is.
When and what is used to perform those tests?
We collect samples of fluids, primarily urine if it's available, blood, and even vitreous fluid, which is a type of fluid from the eye, and we will send those to an outside laboratory for analysis. In addition, in a case such as this, or anybody who's been in the hospital, we try to also collect some samples near or around the time of hospital admission, also for testing if needed.
And I should have started with this, Dr. Ross. When we say toxicology, tell the jury what that means.
Toxicology testing involves the laboratory testing blood, fluid, and tissue samples for the presence of drugs, poisons, and other substances in the body.
What, if any, substances did Mr. Nichols test positive for?
The toxicology results revealed that there was ethanol that was detected, alcohol, also caffeine, nicotine, naloxone, also known as Narcan, which had been administered by EMS, lorazepam, which is a benzodiazepine Valium type drug, and levetiracetam, which is an anti-seizure drug. Both of those drugs were administered in the hospital because of concerns about possible seizure activity as a result of the brain injury. The testing also revealed the presence of cannabinoids or marijuana products, to include delta-9 carboxy THC, which is a breakdown product, and also delta-9 THC, which is the active ingredient of marijuana.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. I want to go now to what were specifically, we've talked about a lot of these, but per the autopsy report, what specifically were the pathological diagnoses in this case for Mr. Nichols?
The pathological diagnoses included blunt force injuries of the head and neck, which in that category included multiple cortical contusions, that is, contusions or bruising on the surface of the brain, as well as rotational or torsional injury of the brain manifested by the hemorrhagic tears and the axonal injury of the brain. Also cerebral edema or swelling of the brain, and acute hypoxic ischemic changes of the brain, meaning the lack of oxygenation of certain areas of the brain due to swelling of the brain. That's what hypoxic ischemic refers to. The subscalpular and subgaleal hemorrhages of the scalp, and abrasions.
Let's keep in mind too, throughout this autopsy, you heard him just dismiss that he had any type of drugs in his system, right? and the only drugs that he had in his system was administered by the doctors at the hospital, other than marijuana, Delta 9. Take note of that.
And contusions on the face and scalp. In addition, there were blunt force injuries of the torso of the body, which included abrasions and contusions, as previously discussed, and some intramuscular hemorrhages of the chest and the back. There were also blunt force injuries of the extremities, again with multiple abrasions and contusions, and areas of diffuse intramuscular hemorrhages of the extremities. There was also the typical sequelae that we see after an individual who has had a cardiac arrest and then resuscitated, depending upon how long there has been a loss of blood flow to certain organs and structures. You can see the result of some type of organ damage from that. And in this case, there was hepatic necrosis, meaning within the liver, there were areas of necrosis or damage to the liver tissue that had resulted from a lack of blood flow during to the liver during the cardiac arrest. In addition, there was pulmonary edema or excess fluid in the lungs, which can have multiple causes, including a resuscitation phenomenon after cardiac arrest.
I'm going to pause you there and take your attention back to an open-ended question regarding the toxicology. You mentioned a number of substances, some of them the jury obviously familiar with, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol. What was Mr. Nichols' alcohol level?
The alcohol level that we measured in a blood sample collected shortly after admission was 49 milligrams per deciliter, which is a 0.049 on the breathalyzer scale.
0.049. When was that sample taken?
That was a sample that was collected at 11 p.m. on the evening of January 7th.
The subsequent toxicology results, did they show any alcohol?
There was actually the first sample that we had requested to be tested, which was actually a sample that was collected later, a few hours later, showed no alcohol in the blood. And that's to be expected after a certain time period. The alcohol does degrade or metabolize away.
The THC that is positive on that toxicology report, what were the levels of that?
The level of the Delta 9 or active ingredient of THC is 3.5 nanograms per milliliter, and the Delta 9 carboxy THC, which is a breakdown product or an inactive metabolite of marijuana, was 47 nanograms per milliliter.
And can you make any determinations, or what does that tell you?
Well, those are the kinds of levels that one might see with typical recreational use of marijuana in terms of its effects. It can be quite variable depending upon a person's use of the drug in the past.
I want to draw your attention back to the pathological diagnoses and talking about sort of that chain of events that you mentioned earlier that would be happening in Mr. Nichols' body after he received the injuries we saw in that video. And you mentioned that he did have a cardiac arrest on the scene. How quickly do all of those, that chain of events start happening after injuries of this nature?
Well, with the injury to the brain, it can be quite variable from individual to individual depending upon the degree of initial injury to the brain, excuse me, and how much that can affect the areas that particularly may have some impact on respiration or breathing and cardiac activity. So there's a lot of variables that go into how quickly brain injury can result in cardiac arrest. In some cases, it can be virtually instantaneous. In other cases, it may take hours to get to that point. Once the cardiac arrest occurs and there's a lack of blood flow, then that further injures other areas almost immediately, such as in his case, it's a superimposed already on pre-existing injury of the brain, as well as impacting the liver and particularly the kidneys in his case as well. That's one of the reasons why he had such a low urine output during his hospitalization, is because of what's called acute renal failure, or kidneys were shutting down because they had been injured as a result of lack of blood flow during the time of the cardiac arrest.
And so because we do know that he went into cardiac arrest on the scene, you do sort of have a timeline for what happened to Mr. Nichols. And then, as you mentioned, the next thing that starts to happen within the body is organ failure. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
What effect, if any, you described how those brain injuries begin to cause that chain of events. What effect, if any, do these other injuries, the blunt force injuries on the torso, or the blunt force injuries on his extremities, what impact, if any, do those injuries have on what's going on?
Well, there are two impacts. Number one, there's hemorrhage into those tissues, so it's basically an effective loss of blood volume from what would normally be circulating and providing adequate oxygenation to his other tissues. In addition to that, when there's injury to muscular tissues, you get breakdown of that muscle tissue. It's called rhabdomyolysis, which releases a number of factors from the muscular tissues into the bloodstream. And those eventually get filtered out by the kidney, and that can be another factor that also contributes to kidney shutdown or renal failure when these substances that are kind of leaked out of the muscular tissues get into the kidney.
Dr. Ross, based on your findings in this autopsy report, ultimately, what was the cause of death?
The cause of death was certified as blunt force injuries of the head.
What was the manner of death?
The manner of death was certified as a homicide.
One moment, please, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
The autopsy, the autopsy described this as a homicide. Why is this not a homicide? I don't get it. I don't get it. Like, I mean, the physician, the examiner, that did the autopsy, she just asked this man, at the end of the day, what would you consider it as? He said a homicide. The state said not guilty 21 times for 21 counts for 3 individuals. Demetrius Bain. No. That's Tadarius Bain, Demetrius Haley, and Justin Smith. Not guilty on 21 counts. They try to claim that Tyree Nichols had drugs in his system. That's why he was so powerful, overwhelming them. Didn't look like he was that strong to me in that video. He appeared to be rather weak and beaten down. So we can exclude that, right? There was no drugs found in his system other than what was administered by the doctors once he got to the hospital. Little marijuana, Delta 9, they said. So we can exclude that. An examiner said at the end of the day that this was clearly a homicide. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else. What else they could have done in this case? You know, the lawyer's job actually should have been easy, because you would have thought all they had to do was to get up there and show that video, show a couple of videos. Ain't no reason behind what happened to Tyree Nichols in the middle of the streets that night. I don't care what he did. He could have slapped one of their mamas. They weren't supposed to beat that man down like that and take his life. And on behalf of Fly High Productions, I myself, Mr. Follow Up, would like to say, first of all, condolences to the Nichols family. Secondly, I want to say justice for Tyree Nichols. This never should occur. In no way, no shape, no form, no fashion. But I had to bring the autopsy, let y'all hear what the examiner said about that autopsy, because I'm still trying to wrap my mind around how they came up with not guilty for 21 counts for them guys. Demetrius Haley, Tadarius Bean, and Justin Smith. They were all found not guilty, at least on the state's level. Now, throughout the course, the family said that they will be doing time. The stepfather, that's what he said. He said they still going to jail. So I guess they going to federal is what he's hitting to. Well, we gonna see. I don't see why or how they escape, the state like that on 21 counts. On 21 counts, all found not guilty. It's sad. The world has went mad. One more thing before I get out of here, y'all. Y'all hip to the Rodney Hinton Jr. incident? They trying to get my man on trying to give him the death penalty. Let's see. We'll start right here, right? Because Ryan is the son of Rodney Hinton, right? I'm just gonna we'll let the video play.
All right. Peace and blessings, all praises to the Most High.
Wow.
What you're about to see is some still photos of the body cam footage shown on the news and by the sergeant of the Cincinnati Police Department in the death of 18-year-old Ryan Hinton. What you're going to see also is a never before seen photo of further body cam footage that they didn't show you on the news. And the reason that they didn't show you this on the news, because it disputes the narrative that Ryan Hinton was pointing a gun at police when he was shot. Now, if you saw the video from a couple of days ago, you heard the eyewitness say he had dropped the gun on the ground. When the police told him to drop the gun on the ground, then he started running. And so that already disputes the narrative. But these photos are going to show how these evil individuals, the police departments, have actually doctored the photo that you see. That's why they're not showing you the full video and all, meaning how that this young man was pointing a gun at the police, but they never showed it. Watch this.
We are trained to use our vehicles as cover from any threat. That's what those officers did with the cars at that time.
Now you see how clear that body cam footage is. Look at how clear that body cam footage is. Now watch how it all of a sudden becomes so blurry that you can't see.
This is body worn camera from officer number 2. Go ahead, Bobby.
You see how when he starts running, it automatically gets blurry. Watch this.
He's got a gun. He's got a gun on your right. On your right.
Yeah, we won't go there. I just want to stick to the facts. I don't want to get to the controversial idea of it, but basically, well, I'm gonna let the video play. Let's watch the video first.
He's got a gun.
And you see right there, they moved the camera so you can't see when young Ryan was shot. But I'm going to show you a photo that shows exactly when he was shot, and it was much
Significant here in a moment when you see. So this is a still image. Again, I'm going to step out front.
they're showing you a still image. And I'm going to show you why they're showing these still images.
This way, okay? They are chasing the individual. So officer number 1 is chasing this guy right here. Okay, this is the guy we ultimately end up shooting. The other.
Now you see how blurry that still image is. You see how blurry, like you cannot even see the trees, right? You can't even see the trees. It looks like a big green blur. And here's a still shot of that picture. Now you see how clear those trash cans are as opposed to. Now you see that picture right there. That is a still shot, right? That is still. You look at the trees in the background. They are much blurrier than that last photo.
Calling it out. He runs through the dumpsters.
All right, anyway. That's allegedly Ryan Hinton there. The son of Rodney Hinton Jr. And his old Ryan Hinton was calling a stolen car, allegedly. And he hopped out the car, dropped his gun, and where he made his mistake at, I would say his biggest mistake anyway, was by picking that gun back up and trying to continue to run with it. And that's him coming between the dumpster there, right? And him and the police kind of met up right there. You know, it's a still photo, right? But in real life, somebody coming between the dumpsters that you just seen drop a gun, gonna probably startle you. You probably gonna react. You probably gonna shoot. Nah, I'm not gonna say nobody who's right or wrong here, but that's what happened. And he took the life of the young man there, right? Which is Ryan Hinton, the son of Rodney Hinton Jr. Rodney Hinton Jr. goes on the very next day after he see the footage of the unaliving of his son. he allegedly runs over the police that did it. This is Rodney Hinton right here.
We now have audio back, so let's get back into that courtroom as this hearing proceeds.
Good morning, Mr. Hinton.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. We're here this morning on the issue of, I believe, yes, at the prior hearing, there was a waiver of probable cause, Mr. Bennett?
Judge, I'm going to waive probable cause as we're going to be in acquainted with the case. I'm waiving probable cause.
Thank you so much. And is there a plea this morning?
It was a plea of not guilty.
Plea of not guilty? Yes. Will you enter a plea of not guilty? And thank you. And as to bond, the state has requested a hearing on the issue of bond or bail. You may be aware of that.
I am aware of that.
Who would like to proceed?
I'm proceeding, Your Honor.
Thank you. And would you please speak loud enough so that everyone can hear you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Louder.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead. Is it okay if he begins?
Judge, he has a burden.
Okay. Thank you. Clear and convincing evidence.
Yes.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we will call our first witness, Officer Beebe. Where would you like Officer Beebe to stand, Your Honor?
If it's okay, he can stand right there. If it's okay with him.
Thank you.
Good morning, officer.
Good morning, Judge.
So I'm going to swear him in.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Officer Beebe, I need you to state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Carl Beebe, B-E-E-B-E.
And officer, where are you currently employed?
I'm employed as a police officer at the City of Cincinnati Police Department.
Okay, what is your current assignment?
Currently assigned as a detective in the homicide unit.
Okay. In that capacity, were you called upon to investigate a matter that involves the defendant Rodney Hinton?
I was.
Okay. Is Mr. Hinton in the courtroom with us today?
He is.
Would you please? Thank you.
Thank you. And identification is one of the elements in this process. And Mr. Nelson, would you advise the court of what statute, if any, that you are operating under this morning?
Yes, Your Honor. It's 2937.222. It's hearings on bail and grounds for denying such.
Thank you.
Okay.
Proceed.
How did you become involved in the investigation involving the defendant?
We were notified of a crash that occurred at 200 West Martin Luther King Drive, where a deputy was struck by a vehicle and at the time had serious injuries.
Okay. And is that location in Hamilton County, State of Ohio, City of Cincinnati?
It is.
Okay. And so where did you begin your investigation? At what point?
Myself and several other detectives, officers, and investigators from a traffic unit went.
Where Mr. Hinton was on that day? Okay. And where was he going?
801 Lynn Street,
Okay.
Which is where the Cincinnati Police Department's criminal investigation section is located.
Okay. And is that abbreviated CIS?
It is.
Okay. And are you aware of his reason for being at CIS?
Yes.
Okay. And why was he at CIS?
He was at CIS to meet with CPD officials to review body-worn camera footage related to an incident that had occurred the day prior. His son had been shot by a Cincinnati police officer.
Okay. And so was he there, to meet with the chief of police?
Yes.
Okay. And so on that date, at that time, did he view a video which depicted his son being shot and dying as a result of contact with the Cincinnati police officer?
Yes.
Okay. And then after he viewed that video, and if you know, approximately what time did he view that video?
Shortly after 9:30 that morning.
Okay. And after that, do you know where he went or what he did?
Yes. So he left that the parking lot, I believe, shortly after about 10:30. Based on witness statements, he went to a couple of different locations and then later returned. I believe about 12:40, he returned to our lot.
Okay. Were you able to speak to the people or some of the people or family members that he was with when he was at CIS?
I was.
Did they describe his emotional state at that time?
Yes. They said that he was upset, was agitated, and they were concerned enough about his emotional state that they did not want him driving, which is why the first time that he was there, when he left, he actually left with family members and not driving the car that he had driven to that location.
Okay. And do you recall what sort of car was he driving after he returned to pick up his car from CIS?
It was a black Ford Focus.
Okay. Approximately what time did he return to CIS to pick up his vehicle?
I believe it was approximately about 12:40 p.m.
Okay. Were you able to trace his progress from CIS to the point where he came into contact with Deputy Henderson?
We were.
Okay. And can you describe where he left, where he drove from CIS to the location where Deputy Henderson was struck?
Well, he after he came back to pick up the car, he actually left the parking lot, followed by some family members in another car, and then a few minutes later returned to the parking lot at CIS, drove through the parking lot, and then left the parking lot again. That was at approximately, I believe, around 12:49 that he left the lot the last time.
Okay.
And then from there, proceeded up to the Clifton neighborhood, where he was traveling northbound on Clifton Avenue, and then turned to travel eastbound on West Martin Luther King Drive.
Okay. So that's a right-hand turn from Clifton Avenue proceeding northbound on the MLK. Is that correct?
From northbound on Clifton Avenue to eastbound on Martin Luther King.
Okay. And where was Deputy Henderson working on this day?
He was working from the intersection of Clifton Avenue and Martin Luther King Drive. He was working one intersection to the east, where there's a traffic light there.
Okay.
At 200 West Martin Luther King Drive.
And what was he doing at that traffic light? What were his duties?
He was engaged in traffic control duties. There is a traffic signal box that's mounted on a metal pole at the corner of the intersection. In that box is a cord with a button on the end of the cord. That button can be used to cycle the light. There were graduations at the University of Cincinnati that day, and so there was a large volume of traffic in the area, and so he was controlling traffic and assisting pedestrians crossing the roadway.
And was he in a sheriff's deputy uniform at that time?
He was. He was wearing a sheriff's deputy uniform, wear a hat, and a fluorescent vest, traffic vest.
Okay. And his employment history involves being a deputy with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so he was performing duties as a police officer directing traffic on that day. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's see. Were you able to retrieve any video from any stationary cameras or mobile cameras?
We were.
Okay. And please describe the cameras that you were able to get footage from.
We had one camera that was a fixed camera. That camera captured them turning from Clifton Avenue onto West Martin Luther King Drive. It was pointed in that direction at the time the incident actually occurred. It was redirected to the scene after the deputy was struck. We also had the opportunity to view camera from a vehicle that was in traffic on West Martin Luther King Drive, approaching the intersection where the deputy was struck, and it did capture the incident.
Okay. And were you also able to speak to people who were in cars that were within one car length away from the defendant?
3 signs that your dad bod is actually high estrogen. 1, you can't get rid of that stubborn chest fat no matter what you do. 2,
Yes. Okay. So your information is obtained from a static video camera, actually it's a moving video camera that was moved to the position after the accident, a video camera that was actually in a bus that was actually on MLK that depicts the incident, and testimony from multiple witnesses who were there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. When you pick up the defendant turning eastbound onto MLK, please describe his path of travel.
So initially he was in one of the lanes on the right side. The traffic was slow moving, stop and go traffic. At some point they, based on witness testimony, they moved into the left straight lane. And then a short time later pulled into the sort of the painted median. It's not a raised median, but a painted median between the two. And eventually that turns into a left turn lane to go into Burnett Woods.
All right. So at that next intersection where Officer Henderson is standing and running traffic, you can take a left to go into Burnett Woods and a right to get to UC where the graduation was happening. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And describe the defendant's path of travel after he pulls into the left turn lane, the one that is used to turn into Burnett Woods.
So based on witness statements, he pulled into that sort of that center lane, the median turns into the turn lane, pulled into there and stopped. There were no other cars in front of him at that point, no obstructions.
Let me ask you a question. When he stopped, was he at the intersection or did he stop short of the intersection?
No, he was well short of the intersection at that point.
Okay. And was traffic moving eastbound while he was sitting there?
No, traffic was stopped.
Okay. But was there room ahead of him for him to pull up to the intersection should he have wanted to turn left?
Correct. There were no vehicles in front of him.
Okay. At that intersection, are there plastic, I guess, for lack of a better word, sticks that are actually in the ground, in the pavement, to ensure that people travel in the proper lane of travel?
There are further up closer to the intersection, yes.
Okay. But he was not up to that point at that time, would that be correct?
Correct, not at the point that he stopped.
Okay. Tell me what he did after he stopped.
So based on witness statements as well as the video, the vehicle accelerated quickly, proceeded eastbound, crossed into the oncoming lanes of traffic when there was no longer traffic to obstruct his travel. Crossed into the oncoming lanes of traffic, went to the left of those little stanchions that are in the middle of the roadway, into the oncoming lanes, through the intersection, directly at where Deputy Henderson was standing, and struck Deputy Henderson and the metal utility pole on the northeast corner of the intersection.
Okay. Were there any evidence of skid marks?
No, there were no indications at any point that he tried to brake, stop, or otherwise avoid Deputy Henderson.
And is that the conclusion our accident reconstructionists have come to at this point?
At this time, yes.
Okay. And does it appear from your review of the video that he headed straight for Deputy Henderson?
Yes.
Okay. And did any of the multiple witnesses that you spoke to and the people that were in the vehicles that were surrounding him, the people that were on scene, did anyone indicate that any attempt to slow down or deviate his path straight to Deputy Henderson?
No, everybody said that he accelerated and was traveling at a high rate of speed all the way up until the time that he struck Deputy Henderson.
Okay. And when he struck Deputy Henderson, was the deputy injured?
Yes.
Okay. And what happened after he struck Deputy Henderson?
Deputy Henderson was launched several feet through the air. He came to rest in a turn lane several feet from where the collision occurred.
Okay. And what happened in the immediate aftermath after he struck Deputy Henderson? Where was the defendant? Who was on scene? What happened?
The defendant was located inside the Ford Focus. there were some other officers that arrived almost immediately, as well as
Was there anyone who was in the car? As soon as they felt that he was the driver.
We're looking for homeowners within valid states to test our new 24-hour bathroom remodel service. Professional.
Okay, as we try to get audio back in the courtroom there, some...
attempted life-saving measures.
Oh, we got the audio back. Let's go back inside the court.
Succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced deceased
Yeah, I think he should
a couple hours
receive
later.
fine.
And in addition to the people that you spoke to that were on the scene and the vehicles that were surrounded, did homicide speak to other witnesses as well?
Yes.
Okay. And from your investigation and from speaking to those witnesses, what is your conclusion as to what happened on that day?
We believe, based on our investigation, the witnesses that we spoke to up to this point, that Hinton left our office and was traveling and came upon Deputy Hinton and made an intentional decision to drive directly at Deputy Hinton and strike him and kill him.
Okay. And based upon that investigation, did you decide to charge the defendant with aggravated murder?
We did, yes.
Okay. I don't have any further questions, Judge.
Mr. Bennett, you may cross-examine the witness if you like.
Judge, first of all, I would like to offer on behalf of the Hinton family and myself, prayers to the Hinton family, prayers to the family of Larry Henderson, the fallen deputy, and I thank the court for having a fair assembly in the courtroom today. With that, I'd like to ask you a few questions, not a lot. Okay. You said that Mr. Hinton left the police station around 12:30. CIS.
He initially left around 10:30.
Came back and then left again.
And then returned a couple hours later, yes.
And you said that individuals that know, saying that he appeared to be.
I'm gonna stop it right there. We gonna fast forward and see what the outcome. Do the judge have to say? Because I already covered this, and if you want to see the remainder of that, you can go back and check that out. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that you go check that out.
Want to
comment? Let me know you've been.
I don't want the court to misconstrue, or the public for that matter, my comments about his stay in Claremont County. Claremont County.
And all the facts and circumstances inquiries.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Based upon the officer of testimony as Officer Beebe.
Yes, Judge.
And all the facts and circumstances surrounding his testimony this morning, the comments of the state that there will be an order of remand with no bond. Please assure the safety of the defendant and any mental health treatment that can be granted. No bond. And we'll give, if the officers want to stay, and the public, you're welcome to stay through the other hearings. Otherwise, if you are concerned about this issue, you may leave, and then we'll take just a 5-minute break. When you're ready. Thank you.
No bond. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
With this deputy right here, okay?
That's Rodney Hinton Jr. on his way to court to answer to charges that he ran his car into a sheriff's deputy hours after meeting with police to view body camera footage of an officer shooting his son a day earlier. What does the body-worn camera video reveal? I take a look at the new footage just released. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Body camera footage of Rodney Hinton Jr. has just been released. It shows him in the hours after he's accused of intentionally hitting and killing a sheriff's deputy in his car in Cincinnati. Hinton is charged with aggravated murder in the death of Deputy Larry Henderson. Aggravated murder is the most serious murder charge a person can face in the state of Ohio. Upset. He left the meeting, and more than an hour later, the call came in that Deputy Henderson had been hit by a car near the University of Cincinnati. Henderson worked for the sheriff's office. It's not the police department. After being taken to the hospital to be checked out, Rodney Hinton was taken to the police department to be interviewed by Cincinnati police detectives who would investigate Deputy Henderson's death. Then it was time for him to be taken to jail after being charged with aggravated murder.
We're gonna get you where you're going, okay?
Can you stand up for me, sir? I'll put this around your waist.
Nobody let me in. I didn't really just showed up. I had to go all the way upstairs and get Gregory Ford. Okay, call me. I was ringing buzzers and
Hardly look like he fell.
Are you able to stand on your own?
Being in a car wreck.
Good. Walked up here. Here, use this hand to hold you. I'm gonna put this hand in a cuff.
I got a double off your ankles as well, sir. You're fine.
They said they're gonna get him where he's going. I wonder if it's at the hospital or they talking about jail. Looks like he got hospital clothes on, but they released him too early. They thought painkillers or something.
Show up anything? You know what? This one's not working, so. But either way, I don't know. You're good. No, I was looking at you. It's at the bottom. I got this right here.
Yeah.
The deputies then load Hinton into the van for the trip to the jail in that neighboring county. It's Claremont County.
Welcome to the county. All right, the easiest way is just turn around and slide in.
They face me and then sit down there and slide.
Now swing your legs around. Need help?
Less than an hour later, Rodney Hinton arrives at the jail.
You able to hold yourself up there?
I'm gonna ask you some questions, all right? You have a serious medical or mental health issue that needs immediate attention? Is that a yes or a no? Have you recently considered attempted suicide? No. You wanna hurt yourself or anybody else? No. Currently taking an addictive substance or on opioid therapy? Had any radiation or chemotherapy the past 6 months? You have a pacemaker? You have anything on you that'll cut us or stick us? You have anything on you at all? Okay.
Cameron Scadaboo, born and raised in Rio Linda, California. It's shame.
We're gonna pat you down real quick. Have you ever been here before? No. What all you got going on? I see you got the hospital gown. You're in Claremont County, bud. In Batavia. You ever lift this foot up so I can feel the bottom of your foot? And your right foot? Okay. We're gonna escort what you over to the county. You having trouble walking? Go ahead, boys. We're gonna start taking these restraints off of you. What we'll do, I'll have you put your hands up on the counter, okay?
I need you to lift your left foot up a little bit so I can get this shackle off you. All right, so we'll get it right.
I'm not trying to be funny, but I can't tell whether he in pain or insane.
Just place that hand up there.
Here, leave his hands still for a second. Hands up, please.
Yeah.
The next morning, Saturday, May 3rd, deputies took Rodney Hinton to court to answer to the aggravated murder charge.
These two? Yeah.
Your hands for me?
All right. Let's go back this way, sir.
I got one of these.
Right around to the back of the van for me, please.
that you know I'm not bothering on the top van, okay? And I'll seatbelt you in once we get you in. Just take your time. I got your back, and for balance, I got your back. Watch your head. You have a seat there for me? You good? Watch so. Do me a favor, just turn your head to the right. Turn your head, I'm sorry, to your left. We'll lift your hands. All right, you good?
The deputies make the 40-minute or so drive to the courthouse for the arraignment.
Not done?
You guys know I'm live. Just so you know.
Ready? Ready? Come on now. Watch your head. Watch your head. Okay, ready? Step down slow. Stay with this deputy right here, okay?
Come forward a little bit. He's gonna shut the door. Good.
Inside the courtroom, a wall of deputies, colleagues of Larry Henderson's, lined the courtroom. As Hinton was led out of court, he muttered something to the deputies that sounds like going to be gone forever.
Did you know there's an app to manage your postal mail? You get so many benefits with opening.
It is clear Hinton was saying gone forever, but what exactly he was saying isn't clear. The FOP president for Cincinnati Police was told that Hinton said the deputy was going to be gone forever as he was looking at those deputies. He was then driven back to the Claremont County Jail.
Your chest. Go ahead. Your knee.
Well, if they would say he said that.
Take a moment, stretch out.
Sounded like to me he said, I'm gonna be gone forever.
Take a moment, stretch out. Watch your head, watch your head. Ready? Take your time. Take your time. Ready? Yep. You alright? One more. There you go. Take a moment, stretch.
Rodney Hinton Jr. then appeared in court this week since his arraignment was continued, and the hearing was disrupted when his brother tried to speak with him.
Thank you. Is there a case that's going to be called?
Your Honor, Rodney Hinton.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett, at the prior hearing before today.
Got to have a seat. Got to have a seat. Have a seat, sir. Sit down. Have a seat. That's my brother. Have a seat.
Then a detective testified about what he says Hinton did last Friday when he drove into Deputy Henderson. Hinton is currently being held without bail. His case will be presented to the grand jury. Hamilton County Prosecutor Connie Pillich has indicated she will likely pursue the death penalty. Larry Henderson had retired in December from the sheriff's office, where he had worked for many, many years.
He was a 33-year career deputy for our department. He retired approximately 5 months ago, and he continued to serve under oath, and he was directing traffic that day at what would have been a very, very joyous occasion for the University of Cincinnati graduates. Unfortunately, you know what unfolded, and we have lost Larry. Larry has been a deputy who has been so extraordinary. We've retired his badge number. Badge number 129 will be retired. Larry touched so many lives in this organization because he was a trainer, because he worked in so many specialized units. And Larry was very animate about the fact that he stay on the front line. He did not wish to take exams to be promoted because Larry's service was on that front line. And I have to tell you, that is bravery extraordinaire. When deputies decide that they want to be out there facing every day to day, that's a sacrifice, and it's a sacrifice for his family, and they have made the ultimate sacrifice.
And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me.
Like I said, I'm no psychiatrist, but Rodney don't appear to be all the way there at this time. What his state of mind was when the incident occurred, I can't say. But I think they should consider will allow him to consider pleading insanity and look into that. It might be something not, is all I'm saying. Which, you know, I ain't saying he's right for what he did. He took a man's child. Snap. Real. Like, I really don't understand, you know, his mindset. I can tell you that I understand his mindset. I'm not in his head, but again, like I said, by them unaliving his child the day before, could be enough to, you know, send him overboard. And they ought to look into or allow him to plead insanity, or at least look into it. I ain't saying allow, but at least look into it. Cause I don't know about you, but to me, Rodney didn't appear to be all the way there. See how he paused when they asked him, did he need any medical or not medical? What they asked him, psychological help. He paused and, you know, they ain't really allowed him to answer that question. They moved right on past it. Sometimes the system can fail us. You know, it's called a reform, right? But all it is housing. You locking somebody up, you know. Rodney may need to go to a different type of institute. That's all I'm saying. His son, you know, not gonna say whether his son was right or wrong either, but you know, we seen that footage as well. Allegedly, he was in a stolen car. Wrong. Why? You know, I can't go that far. I can't tell you why. He can't tell us why now, because they unalive him. But he hopped out the car, dropped the gun, and picked it back up and continued to run. Then he dashed between two dumpsters, two trash dumpsters. And assuming he probably started that police as he came between those dumpsters. Not to give that police no excuse, but just off of what I view. But you can view it for yourself and let me know what you think. Put it in the comments. put it in the comments. Let me know what you think. Should he receive bail? Should they see some type of other alternative punishment for Rodney? Other than, our normal penitentiary judicial system that don't appear to, do no reform, just housing. But nevertheless, again, y'all, this is Fly High Productions. Appreciate you rocking with me. I am Mr. Follow-Up. Salute. Squad up. I'm out.